I'm Dr. Barry, licensed psychologist, and here we talk about true crime and psychology. Thank you so much for joining. Let's hop right into today's topic. Let's go. Welcome. I had planned to wait to discuss this case until Saturday, but the testimony of Dr. Zeisel, I really wanted to talk about it. So, the defense psychologist that met with Lindsay Clancy after the incident, he testified. And we had his direct examination and his cross examination. I have a prior video, and I have now made an entire playlist for this entire trial. So feel free to check out any prior videos. But today I wanted to talk about his the continuation of his direct examination and then also cross examination. There were some interesting things that came out in his testimony, and I was listening to a little bit of the lawyer I was listening to Peter talk about this case, and I also was interested in hearing more of the details of exactly what did she remember, what does she say happened, because we have bits and pieces of it, but I didn't feel like there was this coherent, I didn't feel like I had all of the information that I would have liked to have had if at all possible. Some other experts, sometimes they go into detail a little bit more. To me, during direct examination, when Lindsay's lawyer was questioning the expert, I think, and a lawyer should control the examination, but sometimes they ask a question and the expert gets to answer it. It seemed like the defense attorney was kind of, okay, she was on this medication, and then was kind of almost feeding him the information, and versus it coming directly from the expert. The jurors might not have noticed. I pay attention to things like that, and the jurors, they might not have noticed at all. Welcome to anyone who's catching a live for the first time. I normally do not go live this late, and so good evening, good morning to anybody that is watching internationally, and go to bed if you're in the UK. I'm just kidding. But if you're watching on replay, thank you so much for checking out this video. If you would just like the video, and if you like my content, go ahead and subscribe. I am on my way to 50,000 subs, and this community is phenomenal. All right, I normally don't do that. We did that today. Okay. So I wanted to talk about dissociation and derealization, and also depersonalization, because he mentioned those things, and dissociation is typically not considered to be psychosis. So dissociation, while it's this feeling detached from oneself, there's not always this break with reality. The person still knows who they are. The person might not remember something, but dissociation is this kind of disconnection from yourself. Psychosis is this altered reality. And so there were a bunch of terms being thrown around. The jurors, they're not going to be experts in psychology, but I like for us to nerd out about psychology. So that's where I wanted to point out that dissociation is not psychosis. Those are in two completely different categories. They can overlap. So a person can have dissociation and psychosis, but the dissociation involves disconnecting from their thoughts, feelings, memories, or identity. Psychosis is that break from reality. And that's where a person might be experiencing hallucinations or delusions. So individuals who dissociate usually keep their reality testing intact. They know, while their detachment, things might feel like it's not real, it's not psychosis. There is a difference between those two things. Psychosis and dissociation, they can overlap. Dissociation is that detachment or loss of connection, like zoning out. And I do want to talk a little bit more about derealization, because he mentioned dissociation and derealization. And derealization is also not psychosis. It's a dissociative symptom where a person feels fake, like the world is fake, dreamlike, foggy, or distant. Psychosis involves like a loss of contact with reality. And so that's where there would be those delusions or hallucinations. So once again, with derealization, your reality testing, it stays intact. Like the world is just feeling unreal or strange, and perception might be a little distorted. Whereas with psychosis, reality testing is impaired. The person might truly believe that their hallucinations or delusions are real. All right. I see the question from so I have the QQQ. Thank you all so much for putting that. That helps me flag it. So I will come back to this question in just a moment. If I squirrel out too much, will be all over the place. So derealization, there can also be this sensory experience where a person might feel like the world is blurry or flat, but they're not seeing or hearing things that don't exist. Okay. And then depersonalization, that's where a person feels detached from themselves or from their body. That is also not a form of psychosis. They're both types of dissociation. And that's where the mind is disconnecting from a painful or stressful experience. So depersonalization is disconnection from the self. Derealization is disconnection from reality. So with depersonalization, a person might feel like a robot or like an outside observer. A lot of my clients describe it as like they're observing from the corner or from outside of themselves, but they still understand who they are. They still, but the world just feels like it's not real, but they understand that that's a distorted perception and that's just how things are feeling, and that's how they're walking through the world during that moment. Okay. And so so that's where I'm trying to figure out, because it sounds like there could have been the strongly held false belief, and that would be a delusion. So so difference between like a delusion and like a strongly held false belief, where so like more of a, with cognitive behavior therapy, sometimes you challenge irrational thinking, because sometimes a person's thought is irrational, but it's not delusional. So a delusion is that fixed, unshakable false belief that no logic, no proof, conflicting evidence does not shake that strongly held false belief. And that's where the defense isn't claiming that she was delusional. The defense is claiming that she heard a voice that told her to do it, and that's what happened. I'm still on the fence, so I haven't made a decision one way or another. I want to hear from the state's rebuttal expert. I believe the state has 3 experts that they will be calling. And I do believe that Lindsay did some psychological testing. And so I want to hear from the expert that did that. And from the state side, I think they might say that yes, she was experiencing depression. Yes, that's what, but I suspect that they're maybe going to say that there were intrusive thoughts, but I think they are going to question whether she was truly psychotic. So the only mention of that male voice came after the incident. Now, can people be experiencing psychosis and not share it? It is possible. So that is definitely possible. And I think the people that think she's guilty feels that this is convenient. The people that think she's innocent or not guilty by reason of insanity, they feel that she was failed by the system. And 2 things can be true at the same time. And so that's where I don't know. Like my heart goes out to this jury. This jury has a really difficult task. Even as a mental health professional sitting back and watching this trial, it's dense. Like there's a lot of information. The state's presentation can come off in a way that makes you just not like them. And I don't know, like the state, some of their approach has been, I'm I'm going to be kind with my words. I haven't loved their lawyering all the time, especially knowing, but I think they're just really, they don't believe this at all. And there are no qualms about that, and they are going hard. But the only thing they have to prove is whether or not she understood the wrongfulness of her act and whether she was able to conform her actions to the law. So a person could have a mental illness and still understand that what they're doing is wrong, or still um like understand that they're doing something illegal. And so that's where I wish that they would admit that yes, she did have significant depression. Yes, she was trying to get help. Mental health can be difficult. And when you're trying all these different medication, you're not really knowing what's working. She might not feel like she can be completely honest with all of her providers because she's worried about what they might say, think, or do. You can admit all of that and still potentially say, and yet, like, these are the actions that she took. This is why we believe, and this is what our experts said. I wish that was more of the approach, but they're going a completely different route because I don't think that she's this controlling, manipulative person unless there's evidence that I haven't heard yet. Okay. So I don't know what the state's experts are going to say. They are going really, really hard on this. And so, how often psychosis could be controlled by a person so people around would not notice any changes in the person's behavior, especially when a person is close to having a psychotic episode. So, the situations that I've worked with where a person has become psychotic, their thinking became strange. They started engaging in odd behaviors. There were signs that something was off or something was wrong. Um, is it possible for a person to, excuse me, to be hearing voices or something? Yes, it is possible. But I think it can feel convenient, and that's where I think people are really trying to see, especially since she's never heard the voice ever again. The one time that she heard the voice was right before all of this, and now she's never ever heard it ever again. I haven't had that happen, and if I've worked with somebody who was experiencing psychosis, until they were on the right medication, until they were like, normally if they were in that psychotic state. Now she had significant medical that happened, and so that medical, could that have impacted her psychology, her brain, all of those things? It's possible. Their experts really didn't talk to that about like why she only and the state wouldn't try to elicit this information, but the only time she's talked about hearing that voice was on that day, and that outside of that, to me, it sounded more like intrusive thoughts. So intrusive thoughts are kind of your own thoughts. It doesn't sound like somebody else's voice. It's just these intrusive thoughts. A person could be hearing something that they don't know is real, where they're hearing conversations, they're hearing somebody talk to them, they're hearing these statements, and they're looking around thinking, where is the person? And they realize that nobody else can hear it, that they're hearing things that other people can't hear, and it sounds like a voice different from their own. I wish that if that's what was going on, that had been communicated to her providers. Are people with psychosis good at masking? Can a loved one be able to identify if someone is spiraling? In my experience, so there are significant changes that happen. There are changes in a person's appearance, their ability to care for themselves or others. That's been my experience in treating individuals that have been experiencing psychosis. Um, it depends on the person, because some people are extremely distressed by the voices and they want them to go away. Sometimes individuals with schizophrenia might have lived with the voices for a period of time, and their brain being quiet can sometimes feel lonely. And so sometimes I've had to counsel people around what to do with now their head not being like, now things feel too quiet. Like sometimes we've had to introduce music, or we've had to introduce something else, or while they were working to find the right medication with their prescriber and learning to cope or manage, because as long as they're not having command auditory hallucinations, that's where a person needs to be hospitalized immediately. And then I did watch a video from Dr. G Explains. So he's a forensic psychologist. He has a channel where he talks about body language and things like that. And he talked about the altruistic, I think it's altruistic, where a parent harms their child thinking that they're saving them or that they're somehow benefiting them. I also watched Profiling Evil's video. He recently put out a video where he talked about the different reasons why, because they've researched this. They've researched why sometimes a mother might do something like this. And there are very specific reasons, including getting back at the father, that there's the like harm that just went too far. I think that's what happened in Shonda Vander Ark. I don't think Shonda was intending to do what she did to Timothy, and yet that was the effect, because it was significant harm that happened. And so those are just some other people that have shared some information. The voice. So I thought that the chaplain, at one point, I felt like the chaplain's testimony was almost more helpful than the forensic psychologist, because she was able to just kind of talk about what Lindsay told her about, that on this day she talked about the male voice. And it just might have been that the defense was trying to make sure that they got certain information in. It did come out that she had searched for the "Can you cure a sociopath?" and Dr. Zeisel did give her something to definitely confirm that she's not a sociopath. And so somebody that's a sociopath, like, I don't know. So just recently, I think it was the Utah, Brian Kohlberger. Sometimes I get his last name wrong, but with that case, because he has some different diagnoses. I'm surprised they didn't have antisocial personality disorder. Not really, because but he might not have had enough incidents with the law for them to go with that particular diagnosis, but that's psychopathy. So but a person can do one incident and not meet criteria for being a sociopath by our clinical definition. So clinically, we have antisocial personality disorder, psychopathy, but a person can do something in the midst of severe depression or in the midst of something and not meet criteria for being a sociopath. All right. And so thank you all for being kind in the chat, because there are individuals that might watch this video that might have known, that might have experienced psychosis themselves or have had a loved one experience it. What do you think of the chaplain testifying that Lindsay alluded to the voices? Ooh, you listened to that better than I did. I didn't hear the word alluded. You listened a lot better. I didn't catch that. I heard her say the male voice. I didn't hear alluded to it. That Lindsay had also Googled what are hallucinations, that she had also Googled some other things. And Dr. Zeisel also talked about that a person can do activities, because the defense was really trying to harp on, like, how's a person caring for themselves, caring for other people? Can they do all of this and still be hearing voices? But every time, so Dr. Zeisel would throw in voices and intrusive thoughts. And that's where sometimes it was leaning more towards intrusive thoughts to me versus hearing voices. Definitely that delusion that my family is better off without me. But sometimes I've had people with severe depression, especially in the postpartum section, where somebody has gotten hopeless, and that thought of, and this is a completely irrational thought because it's not true. I have personally wondered if she could have thought that she wanted to do something to herself and she didn't want her kids to not have a mother. And so that's where that altruistic, where a person is thinking they're doing it that way. None of this is meant to help. Like, we're just talking about this in general. If this is too much, please take a break. Make sure that you take a break from all these things. But there was a part of me that just wondered if that could have been part of it. Um, I still have more questions than answers with this case. Um, he did a mini mental status examination with her because I think this was right after, like, this was close to the incident. And he did the hair psychopathy checklist and mentioned that she does not have antisocial personality disorder. He diagnosed her with bipolar disorder with postpartum psychosis and was unable to and that she was unable to conform to the rule of law and had no appreciation for the wrongfulness of her act. Legally, that's like what his opinion is, and that's kind of what he had to say. Cross examination. Ooh. Ay. So she went over the APA guidelines and about avoiding partisan beliefs. And that's where the amount of times that Dr. Zeisel met with Lindsay, and it seemed like it was out of care for her mental health and worrying about how she was doing mentally through the trial, for me personally. And if there are any lawyers watching, I personally would recommend that you have a treating provider that can do that, and you leave your expert witness. Your expert witness isn't the one that's checking on their mental health throughout the trial. So I remember in the Shonda Vander Ark trial, he had a social worker. So the Shonda's lawyer had a social worker on his team that checked in with defendants that needed mental health support. And I just wish that it was somebody else doing it, because for me watching, it did muddy it a little bit. Now, I know he said he wasn't treating her. I know he was concerned about would she be a greater risk to herself. But if it wasn't related to the assessment, I just personally wish that it wasn't done. That's just my own personal thought. I think it makes the evaluation seem more credible, and it makes the evaluator seem more impartial, because it just seemed like he really cared about her and he really cared about her mental health. And it's okay, and you can be an evaluator that cares without also trying to treat them. If you go back and you watch the Jodi Arias case out of, I think it was in California, the psychologist on that case, he seemed to really care about her. And he met with her so many times and he gave her a book. And at one point, it was like, are you treating her? And that came up. And the state experts, so the experts for the prosecution, they were like, yeah, I wouldn't meet with somebody for 50 something hours, because they asked them questions like, okay, so after you've done an evaluation, would you continue to monitor them? Would you continue to monitor their mental health? No, I wouldn't continue to monitor, because she's in a facility that is monitoring her mental health on a regular basis. That there has to be the chaplain is meeting with her over 200 times, that there are these other people. I would step back and let those people do it, because you are the expert witness that is talking about the key features of this case. Those are my own personal thoughts. I don't think he did anything unethical. I don't think he crossed any boundaries. So I want to be clear with that. I think Dr. Zeisel did a great job, and I think he advocated for his client. I don't do forensic evaluations because I care too much. Like, I get very invested in the treatment and supporting my clients. Um, I have done evaluations for individuals involved with juvenile justice, so they're teenagers or children that are involved with court services. I've done assessments for parents involved with child protective services or involved with the legal system in some way. I no longer do court ordered evaluations because, first of all, it takes too much of my time. And it's just because I can end up having to get called into court. I have to cancel all of my treating clients for a day. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy it. I just personally don't. Yeah. So somebody said 35 hours that he spent. I thought the assessment was 35. Did I write down how much time he said he spent with her? I don't know that I wrote it down. It's a long time, and I don't. So it was 37. So he spent a total of 45 hours. I wrote it down. The period of the evaluation was approximately 45 hours. The evaluation was 37 hours. He's met with her at least 60 times. That's what I wrote down during his cross-examination. Some of that information came in. And then he was asked, is it typical to spend 35 hours with an individual that you're evaluating? I want to compare this to Sarah Boone's evaluator for that. Like, so Dr. Harper I think it was Dr. Harper. I'm almost positive. She testified for the defense, and she met with Sarah multiple times, but it was always just to come back to what happened and not making any recommendations of does Sarah need makeup in court or any of those things. You could also say that Lindsay had been failed by so many professionals that the forensic psychologist had that trust and was concerned that somebody might miss something because she could kind of present in a positive way and there might be something darker or deeper going on. But that wasn't said, but that could have been part of it. It just, I personally like those boundaries of like, hey, if I'm called for this purpose, I don't want to make it messy. So anytime when I did do evaluations for Child Protective Services, if I evaluated the child, I wouldn't evaluate the parent because I don't do parenting capacity evaluations. And then if I evaluated the parent, I wouldn't evaluate the child, that they had to find another evaluator, because sometimes those evaluations, I could be called to court, not to give an opinion on if the child should return home or not, but just based on what came up in the evaluation, what my recommendations were. And that could get messy if I had met with both parties. And so those are my own personal boundaries. Okay. The state also asked him if he was examining her as a neutral evaluator. And so he called her patient, but like often people that do forensic evaluations, they say that this is a client, but it's like a legal case client. I'm not their treating provider. But I do think it was easy for those lines to, I don't know, just based on, yeah. I wish that there was some other person that was monitoring her mental health, like during the court process and all of that. And there could have been somebody else that was also doing that. He didn't document his first mental assessment with her. So that very first time that he went to meet with her to assess, did she understand like where she was, that if she understood all of that, because he hadn't yet accepted it as a forensic case yet. And that's where, if I went in as a neutral, an attorney that I know wants me to check on a client for them. And I guess it just depends on, what came up during that first assessment, because they didn't go into what happened. At some point, I think he heard the conversation between her and her husband, where she told her husband about the male voice. And so that's where it's just, the state was trying to throw out confirmation bias. And let's just talk about confirmation bias for a moment. And that's where a person latches on to information that confirms their pre-existing belief and then ignores information that goes against it. And this is a human tendency to search for, favor, and remember information that matches what we already believe. And so everybody has bias, and we have to actively do things to confront, make sure to protect against bias. And so actively seeking out information that's different. And so I listen to people on this, like that I don't fully agree with all of their thoughts and opinions on this case, but I listen to it because it gives me a different perspective. And sometimes like, okay, I see how they think that way. And so listening to things that you, differing perspectives. Now there are some perspectives that I'm not, like I'm just because it attacks one of my identities, something that's important to me. But in general, listening and having conversations with people that have differing beliefs that can sometimes help. You just kind of see a different perspective. Did you discuss your thoughts about Dr. Zeisel giving her his phone to call her husband? And I didn't talk about that. And that's where I think he wanted to build rapport with her. That could be what was happening. I think he's a very caring individual, and he saw somebody in a desperate situation. I think, because the way that he described it, it sounded like he thought they were keeping everybody, including her husband, away from her. And they might have been, until they could get a statement from her, maybe they didn't want her to talk to certain people because they're still investigating. And so sometimes they like sequester, like they don't want witnesses, potential people, like they don't want people to talk and, get their story straight or whatever. I wish Patrick had had a heads up that she was going to be calling, like, because I and Patrick could have been totally okay with that, but that was interesting. And once again, a person can be a patient and be a forensic patient and not be like a treating client. From what he testified to, he did not consider what he was doing therapy for her. There were some aspects that sounded therapeutic just listening to me in general. So I don't know his records. Like, I'm just listening as an outside observer. Yes, we definitely want justice for Cora, Dawson, and Callan. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, yes, yes. All right. The dynamic, and so that's where an expert could lose their credibility if the jury thinks that the person was maybe, because so I felt with Jodi Arias, and I like talking about a completely different case. I thought she had the evaluator wrapped around her finger. And so Jodi Arias was clearly I'm pretty sure I'm talking about the correct case. Y'all know me and names. Yes, I'm pretty sure. Yes. Like I think she was described as pretty manipulative, that and to me, it seemed like she duped him a little, like to me. She had him believing all of her lies. I'm talking about Jodi Arias. I'm not talking about this case. In that other case, and I think the jury found the defense experts to be more credible than, sorry, the state, my bad, me and my brain, the state experts to be more credible than the defense expert. And so I'm still waiting to hear from the state experts on rebuttal, but yes. I do think that some things might have happened that might. So if Lindsay Clancy is convicted, there might have been some decisions that were made where this verdict could possibly get overturned. Like, I don't know. I haven't watched the video that other lawyers have done talking about potential like mistrial issues. I haven't watched that. Have we ever gotten someone who treated Lindsay before the event who said she had heard voices? No. They all said intrusive thoughts. And Dr. Zeisel made it sound like the voices was in their records. But from what I heard, it sounded like it was intrusive thoughts. Yes, it was feeling foggy, and that depersonalization, derealization, all of that is there. Maybe even that disconnection, dissociative symptoms, but I didn't hear or see signs of psychosis that's been discussed from any of the records. Because I do think that the defense, if that was there, they would have pulled it out. And that's what the state has really been harping on, that that there was no mention of psychosis until after the incident. And that's where I said in a prior video that when Lindsay Clancy's mom described, I think it was her mom, that talked about that Lindsay had said that she had thoughts of hurting the children. A thought is different from a voice. And I don't know if the jury's going to hold on to that, because that was like the very last thing that the defense got out of her mom. And they passed it over to the state. And of course, the state is going to start there, because an intrusive thought is different from psychosis. And I don't know why they didn't go more the delusion, but and that's where they're expert, you know what I mean? Like each person's going to kind of figure out where things are, but I still feel like something is missing in this case. I thought the TikTok individual, so the prior, she was a prior, she worked at Brigham and Woman in Brigham's, I don't know. She worked at the hospital that Lindsay Clancy had been hospitalized at. And she had some thoughts on staffing and what they do, and that, yes, they do have like those coloring groups and all of that. And that weekend staffing is different from regular staffing, and all of that will be in the record. And the judge did not allow her in. I thought she came across like it didn't seem out of there, like her testimony didn't sound like biased in any way. She was probably caught off guard that she was brought in. I thought it was adorable when she mentioned that she was like spoiled. I think like I don't know, like she vacations in it wasn't the Hamptons, but it was something like that. Like she vacationed somewhere cool. I thought that was funny, but yeah. She worked at McLean. Thank you. My brain. Thank you. She worked at that hospital. All right. All right. So let's continue to talk about cross-examination of Dr. Zizo. Okay. He did not include the interaction with phone calls in his reports. And they really, the state is harping on if she asked about her children or not. And during that call, she did not ask about the children. The chaplain did say that she mentions her children often and that she does talk about her children. And so that's what kind of came in with the chaplain. And was it the defense? It was the state. It was the state that asked, how many times has she heard voices since this incident? And the answer was none. None. Now, she is still on some type of psychotropic medication. If her diagnosis is bipolar disorder, I suspect that it's a mood stabilizer. And they did not enter her current medications and what she's currently stabilized on. They did not enter that information from what I heard. He talked about collateral contacts and that he spoke with other people about their interactions with her. He reviewed the records, and that whole Beachbody thing. So I had a friend that did Beachbody. I did try the Beachbody shakes. Like it was just a friend of mine was selling it. Is Beachbody technically an MLM? Like I think it's, I don't know. I sold Cutco cutlery, which I didn't lose money. I didn't make a lot of money. Whoever I was working for, they probably got the bigger cut of whatever I sold. I did make some money, but I didn't make a ton of money. And my family, a lot of my family and friends, they all own some Cutco cutlery. But the whole thing about Beachbody and calling it a scam, I don't know if that was necessary, but I guess he was trying to say that she's making these impulsive I don't know if that was like an impulsive decision. That part wasn't clear. I was extremely confused about that part. Let me see. Question: is there a psychosis that lasts 45 minutes and never shows up again? I haven't. So that's where it wasn't clear to me if they are saying that she was hearing that male voice consistently, because he kept saying these persistent, intrusive thoughts and psychosis. But it wasn't clear to me. Like I still have question marks with that part. I still have question marks. And I wonder what the state experts are going to say. I personally have never worked with somebody that's been psychotic for a day. Now, sometimes there's been like trauma or stress induced symptoms. substance-induced symptoms, and they took her blood. So I don't believe that she tested positive for any substances that day. Um, I think because they were talking about jury instructions today, I did not watch all of it, but because the defense, I think, wanted a like almost like uh, prescription drugs being able to be a mediating because of the effect that it could have had on her, that it could have had an intoxicating effect, that the prescriptions could have made her worse. So it's almost like they wanted an intoxication jury instruction. I don't remember if the judge allowed it, but yeah. Um, yeah, and I guess the chaplain never documented info about the children and voices. So, but chaplains, so if I'm working with a client and they give me details about a past crime that does not like, so let's say I have a client that says they did something 10 years ago. Nobody is at current imminent risk or anything like that. There's no current active danger or threat. I would not write down what they said word for word. I might make a general statement, something to, and I might have to contact my liability insurance just to say like, hey, how could I document this in a way that protects me and then also protects the client? Like sometimes with documentation, you are figuring out what needs to be in the note. Also so that it's not used against the person later. If she had chosen to just do not guilty and not guilty by reason of insanity or mental disease, um, the chaplain's notes could have been used against her if she decided to say not guilty. But so those are just my general thoughts. All right. She had major physical trauma afterwards. Couldn't that stop psychosis? I'm not a medical doctor. I am a psychologist. And so that's where I often partner with the medical team if somebody was experiencing something like this. Okay. Um, all right. Why did the chaplain give details about the voice to Dr. Zeisel? Because I think though the chaplain also seemed like she really wanted to help Lindsay. She's adopted 4 children. Like she just seems like she just has like this big heart and she wants to help people. And Lindsay, I think, is likable. Like I think that's what Dr. Zeisel was trying to get across at the end, like that she's loved on the unit. She's a positive person. I think they're trying to get that narrative in front of the jury too, but I don't know. All right. The one thing that I do hope comes out of this is that just because somebody doesn't have a plan to harm themselves does not mean that they don't need to be hospitalized. That somebody can be an imminent risk even if they don't have a specific plan. Can they often they'll try to get them to contract for safety, or they might have loved ones like, hey, can you watch them? Can you keep eyes on them? Can you lock up the dangerous things? Can you blah, blah, like sometimes they'll have loved ones kind of step up with a person. Um, and I do hope that this case does help people that the one thing I think could also go the other way with this case is that people are hospitalized that don't need to be. So there are situations where a person, maybe they are having dark thoughts, but they are able to contract for safety. There is no imminent risk. Their family and friends are coming around them. They're agreeing to not let them have unsupervised contact with unsupervised contact with their children until they're in a more safe, stable place. I will never get over the fact that Patrick described that day as one of her best days, one of her better days. That has question marks in my brain that I've talked about multiple times in multiple different videos. That's where I am still on the fence, and I want to hear from the state experts as well. Um, and then I think it was the doctor that said, I think Dr. Zeisel said, who am I to doubt what she believes or what she doesn't believe? I don't know. Like that was a statement. I'm almost positive he made that statement. I wrote that down. Um, he reviewed Dr. Resnick's report. So I guess there's a Dr. Resnick that's going to testify. They described hypomanic symptoms, but they didn't go into the mania. So they talked about mania, but they didn't describe it in a way that, so they're describing that she had increased energy, that she like increased activity, that I guess maybe organizing late at night. Right. And so I have gotten energy to just clean something late at night, but it was to avoid going to bed or something. Like it's, I don't know. So they did list a bunch of symptoms. I saw somebody list postpartum blues, and postpartum blues is something that many individuals after giving birth that they may experience, and but postpartum depression and then postpartum psychosis. So there's postpartum blues, and then there postpartum depression, postpartum psychosis. Okay, so from least severe or less severe to more severe. That is that. I would definitely document if somebody, but in a general way, it would be like, but I would try to figure out how to do it that protected everybody. So, all right. Harriet was her best day ever. I can't get over that part. That was day one when Patrick said that, because what it brought back in my mind. So I have studied individuals that have severe thoughts toward themselves. So I did a training. There is, let me see if I can find the information for it. It's because it's a type of treatment that helps alleviate pain in a person's life, and it helps. And they've done a bunch of research. There are some people that call themselves suicidologists, and that is what they research, what they study. There is the Center for Research and Prevention. That's through Harvard, and there are likely some other centers that do that as well. Let me just, yes, there's that. What was that? What was that crisis? I know that I received a training, and my brain, I can't remember the name of it. It was a special training. CAMS, Collaborative Assessment and Management of Suicidology. That was that training was actually very helpful. I'm going to share my screen briefly. Sometimes there are other therapists that are looking for information. And so CAMS, this training was very helpful. They wrote a book on managing that risk. This is something that all therapists should be trained in. And if somebody, when I say just some form of crisis risk assessment, there are some therapists that aren't comfortable when clients mention things like this, and they should not accept clients with severe depression. Like, somebody should know. And if somebody is experiencing dark thoughts, they should ask, and they're looking for a new therapist. I would ask, how do you manage clients that have dark thoughts, that have thoughts with no plan? Are you available can I schedule a sooner appointment? Are you available by text? Some therapists are not at all. And so they will refer somebody to a crisis hotline. I am not available 24/7, but I have had clients message on the weekend, like, are you available? And we were able to have just a quick 5-10 minute conversation. We were able to move up their next session. We were able to kind of talk about something over the phone of, okay, do you need to go to the hospital? Do you have supports around you? How can we handle this situation? It's not something that happens all the time. And for clients that are higher risk, I often do try to have multiple services around them. So I've worked with individuals that have done partial hospitalization, that have done intensive outpatient, that have done specific have done residential, which is like longer stabilization, and that have done short term, so acute or short term stabilization. The goal of short term stabilization is medication management. Now, when that TikTok social worker said that it's only about 20 minutes of therapy, that's accurate. She said 8 clients. That is a lot. So when I was on an inpatient unit, I think we had 4 clients. I think it was 4. The max was maybe 5, but I had, I think, 4 or 5 inpatient clients, and then I had some outpatient clients as well. And we had to attend rounds where we would talk about cases. If I have had very intense cases, I have sought supervision or consultation with somebody that was more skilled, um, or just with another colleague. I've received permission from the client to be able to collaborate with another professional. Arizona, my bad. Thank you, Arizona. I like the pink. Thank you so much. My mother-in-law got this for me. They love Royal Caribbean. I have never been on Royal Caribbean. My mother-in-law, they love it. I don't even know that this is coming through this mic. I think this is coming through. I hope my sound has been okay. This mic is plugged in, and I think it's coming through that mic. I apologize. This is about to get louder. This isn't. It's not even connected. My mic isn't on at all. Okay, so let's have. I'm gonna switch to the mic. My bad. I'll make sure to check my mic settings next time. I agree. So I don't believe Patrick did anything. Lindsay has admitted that she did all of this. Welcome in late. Um, and so I'm so glad that we were able to talk about this. This case is very difficult. Please take care of your mental health as you are watching. And it's okay if we have different opinions. Like it is totally okay. I totally understand, and I will respect the jury's verdict. If the jury found her not guilty by reason of insanity, I can see how they got there. If the jury found her guilty, I could also see them leaning that way too. I don't know what's going to happen with this one. I really don't. Nate Eden interviewed a woman who experienced postpartum psychosis. Yes. She said that a higher percentage of women get postpartum psychosis after childbirth than babies pass from SIDS. Ah, wow. Thank you for sharing this right here, because we often talk more about SIDS and that risk than we do postpartum psychosis. And so um, I'm so sorry. Please next time tell me about the mic. It's a little low, and I'm gonna have to figure out my whole mic situation later. I apologize that my mic, like this one, is not connected. I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. She's it came unplugged. That's what happened. It's not. It's there's nothing there. It should be plugged in. We discussed the fact Dr. Zeisel continued to see there. So he denied seeing her as a therapy patient. He denied that. He denied treating her. I think he would say that he continued to assess her. That he continued to assess her. I think that's what he would say. Oh, okay. The other mic was better. I'll switch back. If the camera mic is better, I'll switch back. All right. I appreciate you all. Be kind. Don't do crimes. I will go live on Saturday. So tomorrow there's going to be something more that happens in this case. We will talk about it on Saturday. I thought Beachbody was an MLM. I knew somebody that sold it, and I did. I think they were trying to get me. I wasn't going to sell it. Cutco had already got me. uh, so I so appreciate you all. Be kind, don't do crimes, and I will see you all next time. Have a good one. Bye.